For decades, discounted Canadian energy exports have been a cornerstone of the U.S. economy. Canadian oil, sold at a markdown compared to global benchmarks, kept American refineries competitive and fuel prices lower. Electricity exports, particularly from hydro-rich provinces like Quebec and Manitoba, supplied millions of American homes and industries with reliable, affordable power. In many ways, Canada acted as the quiet guarantor of U.S. energy security, but that trust has been shaken. A series of tariffs imposed by the Trump administration, coupled with Trump's dismissive rhetoric suggesting Canada could become the 51st state, left many Canadians questioning the wisdom of such deep reliance on their southern neighbor. The result has been a sharp pivot. Canada is now accelerating efforts to diversify its energy trade, building infrastructure that minimizes U.S. leverage and opens new routes to Europe and Asia. That shift took a dramatic step forward today. Following Prime Minister Mark Carney's trip to Germany, a surprising piece of energy news emerged, one that few anticipated, and which signals just how rapidly Canada's energy landscape is changing. Canada is preparing to open negotiations on exporting liquefied natural gas, LNG, to German customers, aiming to capitalize on rising demand across the European Union. Prime Minister Mark Carney and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz met Tuesday in Berlin, where LNG featured prominently in their discussions. The two leaders also addressed cooperation on critical minerals, and Carney disclosed that a German company is among the two leading contenders for a major submarine contract. According to a statement from Carney's government, Canada and Germany already maintain an energy partnership that enables closer work on LNG. The allies also intend to collaborate on establishing a transatlantic hydrogen trade corridor. Carney emphasized that he envisions medium-term opportunities for exporting both LNG and hydrogen. He pledged federal support worth billions of dollars for infrastructure projects that would expand Canada's export capacity, noting that the first initiative, focused on port development, will be announced within 2 weeks. Planned expansions at ports in Montreal, Churchill, Manitoba, and other sites along the East Coast could unlock enormous potential to ship LNG and minerals, Carney said. It's the number one focus of this government to build that infrastructure, and particularly infrastructure that helps us deepen our partnership with our European partners. At present, no publicly disclosed projects on Canada's east coast are near commercial readiness for LNG exports to Europe. In 2023, Spain's Repsol SA abandoned plans to expand its St. John terminal, citing prohibitive shipping costs. Despite past setbacks, Carney's government is optimistic. Officials in Ottawa said Germany and other EU countries had repeatedly expressed interest in Canadian LNG during Justin Trudeau's tenure, though the previous government only backed West Coast export projects. Several companies are now exploring eastbound LNG shipments, including through Churchill, according to a Canadian government official. Some of these firms took part in discussions in Berlin. Energy Minister Tim Hodgson noted that industry players are aiming to launch LNG shipments to Europe within 5 years. Germany sees natural gas as a transition fuel, he said in Berlin. Canada has the opportunity to be a great partner to Germany. The key question is whether Canada will pivot away from the United States natural gas market and turn toward Germany, and in turn, whether Germany will reduce its LNG purchases from the United States. To understand the significance of this potential shift, it's important to look at the scale of North American energy trade. In 2024, Canada supplied the U.S. with an average of 8.8 billion cubic feet of natural gas per day, about 3.2 trillion cubic feet over the year, earning roughly $8 billion in export revenue. These flows have depended almost entirely on cross-border pipelines, leaving Canada exposed to changes in U.S. policy and market dynamics. The launch of the LNG Canada project marks a turning point. With a total liquefaction capacity of 14 million tons per year, equivalent to about 1.9 billion cubic feet per day once regasified, the facility could generate an additional $8 billion annually at prevailing Asian spot prices when both processing units are fully operational. By diverting close to 20% of its daily gas output to Pacific-bound LNG tankers, Canada can reduce its reliance on U.S. pipelines while tapping into the fast-growing Asia-Pacific market. Countries such as Japan and South Korea, eager for cleaner fuels and secure supply routes, represent a major opportunity. This diversification not only protects Canada from price and policy fluctuations south of the border, but also strengthens Ottawa's leverage in energy negotiations. LNG Canada is one of the country's largest industrial projects, a 40 billion Canadian dollar investment approved in 2018 and backed by Shell, Petronas, PetroChina, Mitsubishi, and Korea Gas. After 5 years of construction, the plant produced its first LNG on June 22, 2025, with the initial train, designed for 6.5 million tons per year, running at partial capacity during commissioning. The first cargo loading took place on June 29, when the Gaslog Glasgow docked following the completion of cooling and commissioning processes. A second train is scheduled to come online later this year, doubling total capacity to 14 million tons by 2026. At that point, Canada is expected to become the world's 8th largest LNG exporter, just behind Nigeria, and diversify a gas export profile that has so far relied primarily on U.S. buyers at volumes of 8.6 billion cubic feet per day in 2024. The project's Pacific Coast location is also strategic. It lowers shipping costs and provides Asia-Pacific customers with supply routes that avoid politically unstable regions. Another major motivation for Canada to export overseas rather than relying on the United States market is simple: better pricing. Western Canadian Select Heavy Crude has historically sold at a discount to West Texas Intermediate because of inland congestion and limited market access. But when the Trans Mountain expansion opened new West Coast capacity in May 2024, that discount narrowed from an average of $18.65 per barrel in 2023 to $14.73 per barrel in 2024. Building additional eastbound capacity and opening new export outlets would likely tighten that gap even further by reducing dependence on a single southbound route and creating access to non-United States markets. The result? Higher realized prices for Canadian producers, and more royalties and taxes flowing back into Canada's economy. What about Germany? What are the main reasons for Germany to choose Canadian commodities over American ones? Germany has several reasons to view Canadian LNG as an attractive alternative to American supply. One of the strongest advantages is environmental. Canadian projects such as LNG Canada and Kitimat are designed to operate with some of the lowest emissions in the world, producing roughly 0.15 tons of carbon dioxide, equivalent per ton of LNG compared to the global average of 0.26 to 0.35. For Germany, which places a premium on climate responsibility, this offers a cleaner option that aligns with its sustainability goals. Diversification is another important factor. At present, Germany relies heavily on American LNG imports alongside efforts to replace Russian pipeline gas. By adding Canadian LNG into the mix, Germany reduces its dependence on both the United States and Russia, strengthening its energy security and giving itself more room to maneuver politically and economically. Pricing also plays a role. Canadian LNG shipped from the Pacific Coast can bypass the Panama Canal and avoid some of the logistical challenges faced by American Gulf Coast exports. Feedstock costs in Canada, particularly through the Coastal GasLink system, have been reported at less than half the American Henry Hub benchmark, which could give Canadian cargoes a cost advantage. In addition, developing direct supply lines from Canada avoids entanglement with U.S. midstream infrastructure, reinforcing Germany's desire for more geopolitical independence in its energy mix. Canada's approach to energy development also carries political and social weight. Projects have emphasized partnerships with indigenous communities and stronger environmental oversight than many American counterparts, which fits well with German preferences for ethically sourced, sustainable energy. At the same time, Canadian LNG faces hurdles. Export facilities are expensive to build in remote areas, and strict regulation can drive costs higher than those in the more mature American industry. For Germany, however, the balance of benefits is compelling. Canadian LNG offers cleaner production, competitive pricing, and diversification of supply, while supporting long-term goals of ethical and sustainable trade. Although it is not without challenges, Canadian LNG could become a valuable pillar of Germany's energy strategy, reducing exposure to American leverage and reinforcing its transition toward a more secure and resilient energy future. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. As an independent channel, we don't have corporate backing. We rely on your support to keep going. If you found this video valuable, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. It really helps more people find our work. Thank you so much for being part of our community. Check out the next video on your screen. We picked it just for you.